This is the 5 Point Play podcast, the bonus edition. We got our man Brett back from the Wildcat Radio. If you remember back in the early part of the season, when Duke went on the road, we went on the road. And honestly, Brett, we got the better of you in that matchup. So I appreciate you coming on. I know Adam's feeling a little sheepish about coming back on here.
Yeesh.
But you
Yeesh.
stepped
Called
up.
out.
That's right. And then we got the always controversial Steve the Doof fan. You just go to
We
the
don't.
YouTube comments. You just go to the YouTube
We
comments
don't
and
need
find
to
that out.
keep saying. We don't need to keep saying that. But okay.
But
Right.
no, Brett, appreciate you joining us again on the 5 Point Play podcast. Um, we'll get right to it. You guys have improved. We've improved. And so we're going to recap the first game a little bit, but we really want to focus on the matchup Thursday night, which is 9:40 p.m. Eastern time. Again, another late tip for us Eastern time zone folks. But
So
it's got
you're
to be
welcome.
it's got to
You're
be right up.
welcome. You're welcome, Arizona.
That's right. You got to be pretty happy about that, though.
Yeah, well, I'm somebody that was born and raised in Arizona, and now I'm a permanent resident on Pacific time zone. So it's much nicer as a middle-aged man to not have to stay up late, because once it's about 9 o'clock, I just can't anymore.
But wait. Doesn't Arizona not even they're like, I don't identify with changing
Arizona
times.
Arizona does not observe daylight savings, so it's a challenge for me and Adam when we're trying to record. So effectively time zone switch, but it's really that everyone else switches around Arizona. It makes life hard. But
So there's no farms in Arizona. Got it.
oh, that's not true, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm excited to be back, guys. I think the first go round, I think I've enjoyed the spaces with your brethren, and maybe had some of my own controversial takes on there that I thought were hilarious. Maybe dumping on Mick Cronin because he's an awful human being. Easy to hate. I maybe made a vulgar joke describing his physical appearance.
Start.
But I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
hopefully it's gonna be a good game.
I think there will be for the first 10 minutes or so.
I do too.
But okay. So let's just kind of talk about what happened in the first game. I was kind of one of those games where it was real competitive, and Duke kind of pulled away toward the end. I know that we all made our predictions, and I think obviously you guys predicted Arizona to win in a close one, and I think we predicted Duke to win kind of relative, 9 to 10 points tops back early in November. Walking out of that game, what did you feel about your team, and now where do you feel about your team now?
Yeah. So if you go back to the Twitter X machine, I was razzing on a bunch of Arizona fans that were freaking out. Early in the season, Arizona had a tough non-conference schedule, and they weren't winning the games, right? Speaking of Mick Cronin, they blew a big lead there at home. Arizona fans were panicking. They're like, are we even going to make the tournament? And I had the hot take of collectively, but even after the Duke game, I'm like, guys, Duke is really, really good. That is clearly one of the top two teams in the country, and it's a Duke program. They're well coached. They're disciplined. Even though they're young, you could tell they, were very organized, and that showed up in that game. And Arizona was still finding their roles, right? So I actually felt Arizona competed fairly well in that game, considering how good and advanced Duke was despite their youth. Cooper Flagg is obviously an amazing individual player that is going to be the best player on the court, probably. He's going to be the number one pick. He's probably the best player on the court the rest of the tournament in every game, right? So I was in the minority thinking that Arizona actually I saw enough, and maybe it's just because I played a lot of basketball, that I'm like, this Arizona's not as far behind Duke here. Duke's just out executing them across the board and just got beat, right? I think Jaden Bradley was the only guy that seemed like he had a pretty decent game. One of your guys was on the spaces and was saying he needs to be shooting more, and it's like, yeah, maybe, but he's also not a great shooter. But he's like a true point guard trying to facilitate and be a force multiplier for the rest of the team. But if you go back and look at that, Arizona's I'm sure both teams have grown a lot. I think Arizona has probably grown a bit more, which is what makes this a really intriguing matchup. Mo Krivas was still trying to work his way back from the offseason injury. Tommy Lloyd has been on the record, and I kind of believe him, that he thought Mo Krivas was going to be the best player on the team, but he had he's a legit 7'2", like some of these guys like Umar Bala, when he was back in Arizona, I saw him at a bar. Like, he's 3 inches taller than me. He's not a 7-footer. He's like 6'9". You're lying. I mean, I was at the first round game in Seattle, and they listed Trey Townsend at 6'7", and I just laughed because like, no way, I'm taller than him. But Mo Krivas kind of shut it down early. Not long after that game, he played more minutes than Henry Vasar, has been a revelation coming in there. And the thing that I was begging for all offseason, and I had the hot take on our pod months before the season. My co-host Adam asked, like, who's going to be the player that's the first round pick on this team next year? And I'm like, I think it's Carter Bryant. And nobody was talking about him as a first round pick, and he thought I was crazy. It's almost like I know ball or something now, because now more and more people are saying he's not just a first round pick, he might be a top 20 pick. So he has been a revelation and getting more minutes at the 4, kind of out of necessity, which is what I always thought he should have been in this current roster. But, I'm not the head coach and I'm not making the big bucks. But Henry Vasar has been a revelation. I think in that game, Del Orso hardly played, and now he's in the starting lineup. Toby Awaka wasn't playing as much in that game as well. He's now in the starting lineup most games. There's a different understanding of players' roles at Arizona now at this point in the season that I think is going to be more consistent with where Duke was in the first matchup, where people know what their role is, and that's what gives them the best chance for success. Lord knows we're going to get some guys on this roster. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. You're going to get the good version or the bad version, and we've been getting the good version of guys like Caleb Love a lot more of late, playing within himself. Even like Toby Awaka has become a freaking force in the last game. I think at one point he had as many rebounds as Oregon did in the first. He had 12 rebounds, I think, in the first half. He's not a 7-footer. He's just a tough guy. And this Arizona team is not the one you've seen the last few years, where it's kind of like a sports car that when it's functioning at its best, it's gonna, look real pretty and drive real fast. But if something goes wrong, it kind of crashes. This is not that team. Arizona against Oregon had a disaster start, down 15, 20 points in the first 5 minutes. Recent years, teams would have folded. This one has a collective mentality. They have a few more dogs on it and not as many guys that are kind of wilt. Toby Awaka being inserted the starting lineup is one of those dogs and one of those differentiators. And Henry Vasar, for a guy that a couple years ago was – I had the hot take that he had NBA potential, and people thought I was absolutely insane for that. And now he's, Tommy Lloyd's getting asked in press conferences, why are you hiding this guy from NBA scouts? And Tommy Lloyd got relatively offended at that. But I think that the gap between where Duke was and Arizona was at the first game has significantly narrowed. So I think it's going to be a really fun matchup.
Can I go, TK?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I? I'm not trying to bully Mr. Barry here, and I do agree, because I kind of feel like I'm you with Blue Devil shoes on. You know what I mean? Like I'm the dude who's like, this guy's transferring, this guy ain't it, this, that, and the other. TK, I think you can stamp that for me. But to say that Duke is not evolved from that Arizona game is crazy, because Caleb Foster was a starter when we played Arizona, correct?
Yes.
Well, I'm not saying that they haven't. I'm not saying they haven't evolved. I'm just saying I think there's been more room to run for Arizona. Okay.
Well, we haven't seen a Pat Nagamba until the ACC tournament, and now he's showing up. I don't know. I don't know how Arizona defends the perimeter. I don't know how they defend the paint. And as long as you can keep Caleb Love from walking into a 3-pointer, Duke's going to run away with it. Like I get Caleb Love is the Duke killer. I understand that. Like, he's out there hunting whales. I understand. But I don't think that this is the game for him. I really don't think it's going to be close. It's a 15-point game.
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I think the level of toughness of this Arizona team after that non-conference schedule and that Big 12 gauntlet, they were competitive with Houston in the Big 12 title game for the vast majority of that game, even up well into the second half. And, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a in the huddle video that they aired on the TV show where Tommy Lloyd was screaming at them, you got to be tough. You got to be tough. Because Houston's going to be slapping at the ball. They're going to try to just get under your skin. And that breeding ground for Arizona, they've taken some punches this year. And the way you toughen up is you take some punches, you get back up, and then you punch back. And that showed up in the Oregon game. And you got guys like Tobe Awaka he's not going to back down from anybody. Henry Vasar has been shockingly aggressive, I would say, and bouncy for a guy that still probably needs to put on some weight. But he's a legit 7-footer that can also, he's capable of hitting threes. They're getting better at handling pressure on the perimeter, which sometimes can throw some of their guys out. Del Orso and Townsend still struggle with elite athletes, so they might be the X factor here because they're kind of more, they're probably the soft underbelly that can be exposed. Oregon was hunting them, or hunting at least Del Orso, he's a pure shooter and he tries hard, but he just doesn't have it on lateral quickness. But honestly, Caleb Love has been the last couple weeks. There was a stretch in the last year or so where Caleb Love wasn't looking for his shot. They almost, broke him by trying to make him grow, and he was just the worst version of himself. And these days, even in games where he's quiet, he's getting 6-7 assists, a bunch of rebounds, and playing pretty darn tough defense. When you combine that with KJ Lewis on the perimeter, Carter Bryant is a 6'8" NBA first round pick, long-limbed guy that all of a sudden is hitting threes. I did not count on that. I had a lot of things I was right on with my hot takes. I did not expect Carter Bryant to become a 3-point shooter, and he might be the best shooter on the team, and he's also the best defender. And he's 6'8" with long arms. It's going to be interesting how they try to match people up and try to keep people out of foul trouble. But this is the level of toughness physically and mentally on this team. It is pretty night and day from the first matchup against Duke.
I'll say this, man. I agree with you, and I didn't mean to cut you off. But if you have to coach toughness, if I have to call a timeout and be like, I need you to be tough, we're not there yet. We need to walk into this thing like we're wearing cinder block shoes. We need to be tough.
Yeah.
And there's been times where John has gone into the locker room at halftime and been like, y'all are playing kind of soft, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. But if I have to coach toughness, if I have to coach effort.
Well, that's where go look at the minutes in that first game. See what Tobe Awaka got compared to what he's getting today. Look at what Henry Vasar is getting compared to what he's getting today. It's a different roster right now, even though it's mostly the same guys minus Mo Kribas.
I think Duke is too.
No, they may be. I guess I'm just saying I think Arizona has had more room to grow from where they were in the first matchup. I think Duke was more advanced at the time, and it showed. Right?
I think.
Go ahead,
So,
TK.
yeah, I was just going to say on that point, Brett, is that obviously you're on the West Coast, you're doing Arizona, and we're doing Duke. And one of the things that we talked about, and we talked about this last night, is that I feel like in that Arizona game, because that was a low-scoring game, right? It was 69-55. That Duke's defense at that point was way further ahead than Duke's offense. And now Duke's
100%.
offense has caught up. And so when I look at this matchup, and this is not a slight to Arizona, because Arizona has improved dramatically since that first matchup as well. But when I look at it, I can look at it in a couple of different ways. And one of the things I always say on our podcast is that it doesn't matter what type of team we play, because whatever type of style of ball you want to play, we'll play it and we'll beat you at it. And so I'm coming at it from that perspective where I agree. We spent a lot of time last night talking about Carter Bryant and the evolution that he's made. When I look at Arizona, why didn't he start against Oregon in the classic Big 10, Big 12 matchup that is Arizona-Oregon? Why didn't Carter Bryant start in that game? And then what is he going to do against Duke? They're going to try to match him up with Cooper Flag, because that seems to be what the lineups present themselves to be in a big-time matchup.
Yeah, well, first off, get out of my head. I mean, I was pushing for Carter Bryant to start a long time ago and start at the 4. And I think a lot of Arizona fans are, the funny thing is Arizona has Townsend, Awaka, and Del Orso in the starting lineup. That is not their 5 most talented players by any means. I'm not even sure the top 3 are in that starting lineup, because I think I would take Henry Vasar, I would take KJ Lewis, I would take Bryant over those last 3 guys most of the time. The Tommy Lloyd has kind of been borderline stubborn with, people know their roles, and if it's going badly, you're going to see a substitution 2.5 minutes in, probably for Del Orso, right? Probably bring in KJ Lewis. He's a guy that they might throw it. I have a feeling Arizona's going to try to rotate some guys on Cooper Flag, mainly KJ Lewis, Carter Bryant, try to keep each of them out of foul trouble and max effort focusing on defense. It goes back to where Arizona now has guys that understand their roles, and that's where I think Tommy Lloyd hasn't wanted to break them out of that. The interesting thing, I think you were 100% right when you said that Duke's defense was ahead of their offense at the time. 100% agree, and Arizona's offense was kind of broken at the time. And it's not even that they're a great offensive team, and I think a lot of folks that aren't watching this team every game. I mean, I think I was tweeting out from a month or 2 ago. I'm like, everybody assumes Tommy Lloyd and thinks free-flowing offense, high-scoring team. That's their mentality. This is a defense team first at this point, which is not what you expect from a Tommy Lloyd team, and where they've had a lot of success. And I've been preaching it for years, so now I'm just relishing in it and, quote tweeting things with all caps and multiple exclamation points of defense to offense. That is the answer for Arizona to be successful, right?
Defense translates to offense. I love it.
That is Arizona. That is what has made Arizona successful, because they've been shooting well in the tournament so far from 3, but they're not a great 3-point shooting team. They have guys that are capable,
sure,
but they don't.
We know. Trust me, we know.
Yeah,
we know.
But they have athletes, they have that toughness, they have guys that end the possession with rebounds. Like Toby Awaka gets more rebounds per minute for a guy his size than almost anybody. And Henry Vasar, for a 7-footer, can run the floor real quick. Carter Bryant is a gazelle that, boy, if he sticks around one more year, he's going to be a lottery pick kind of player, because I think he can make that kind of leap. And so that's where they're a different team in that regard. And they've had to face the Houstons. They've had to face Iowa State and Texas Tech, and going into these tough Big 12 environments and teams that are trying to out physical them. And you take enough punches, you get some calluses, right? You get some toughness both mentally and physically, and that's where the defense and effort will travel. I think hopefully the shots fall. That's a lot of times where the Arizona games have kind of ended up at. And so for me, Oregon came out the last game and they blitzed Arizona and they weren't ready. And I'm pretty sure last year's team, even though it's probably the high watermark for them at their best was probably higher, they would have lost that game by 20. They would have never recovered. They came back and beat them.
I see. I feel like you're like, if you use the term Duke Blue Devils in what you were saying, like, that's Duke in a nutshell, right, TK? Like, that's like, we didn't see the emergence of Pat Nagamba, or I'm probably not saying that right.
No, you are. And Isaiah Evans.
Evans.
Even Sion James to that level.
Caleb Foster, the way he's been playing lately. I mean, like, to say that Duke hasn't evolved, and I'm not saying, Brett, that you didn't say Duke has not evolved as a team throughout the year, but like the emergence of Big Pat, the emergence of Caleb Foster, like, hey, oh yeah, I can dribble the ball and get to the rim. The defense of Tyrese Proctor, just the overall dog mentality. Because I liked when you said that, the dog mentality that Arizona brings to the floor. I think this is going to be a heavyweight fight.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think it's going to come down to shot making. Quite honestly,
100% agree.
it could be a free throw shot making tournament, or it could be who can make the most outside shots or 12 footers and that type of shots. But I don't think Duke hasn't evolved. I think they definitely have evolved. I mean, we put Caleb on the bench for 3 months, and we brought him off the bench and told him to play 13 minutes the past, NCAA game and the ACC tournament championship. So I agree with you with Arizona because they are a difficult team to face. They're long, they're big, they're athletic. But I think Duke has just so many weapons down the bench. Like, we've got NBA players who are the 8th best player on the team.
Yeah. Hey, don't get me wrong. Duke is great, man. I was saying that the first matchup. That's why I was telling people, guys, you're getting beat by one of the top teams in the country. This is a Final Four caliber team. I knew 100%. It at that moment. And everybody freaking out. I'm like, just take a deep breath and calm down. You're wrong. Arizona is, yeah. And it's not just Duke. I think this is one of the best Duke teams in a while, personally.
TK, I said that last night.
And I could tell that the first matchup, and that's where I was like, I'm actually thinking like they acquitted themselves pretty well. Granted, it was at home, and they probably should have, maybe put up a little bit more of a fight. But I'm like, no, guys, these guys are good. This is high level basketball happening, and so I kind of expect that again. And I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think you're 100% right, D. I think it's going to be it's going to be whether the shots fall or not, and whether if people are taking good shots and making them, or taking good shots and missing them. That's going to be the difference here. And I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be closer than the spread.
It'll be fun for everybody, but us three, for sure. Great.
I did want to ask you one question. That in our first matchup, Kama Malawach, he's on a big guy, 7'2", massive wingspan. He's done a phenomenal job, especially over the last month, of really protecting the rim and deterring shots. So he may only get 1 or 2 blocks a game, but he deters so many, and he deters a lot of folks from getting into the paint. How is Arizona going to counter that type of size, especially with Kribas out? I know you haven't had him in a while, but how are you going to try to do that? Because Duke's going to be the biggest team that Arizona will play all year.
Plus Big Pat. Let's throw that. He's had more blocks than Common since like once we got to the ACC tournament. He's had more blocks. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah, I will be shocked if they don't try to put him in a pick and roll up high with Henry Basar over and over and over again, because Henry Basar can hit threes. He is an incredible finisher on lobs. He's shockingly bouncy, and he's a lot more aggressive and tough than I think most people ever thought was possible for him now. That's not to say, he's still a little slight, so he can get bullied. So that's where I think that it's going to be a pick and roll kind of game to try to open that up. Arizona has different guys that try to attack in different ways. So I would expect a lot of Caleb Love and Jaden Bradley pick and rolls. They tend to, with Trey Townsend, he's kind of like, he's the guy that transferred in from D2 and I think it was Oakland and was a March hero there. He's been playing a lot better, but he's kind of an undersized effort guy. They just try to have him go, he's like the world's best pickup league game. He's going to never lose a game at LA Fitness for the rest of his life when he's done playing at Arizona. Because he just plays
YMCA superstar.
Oh, but he's the guy he's not an elite level athlete, but he's crafty and he's physical and he's tough. He sometimes struggles with guys that are, I've played enough elite level kind of basketball players and even like low level elite. And it's like, oh, I'm a pretty good basketball player and I cannot compete with you. And then there's like, 3 standard deviations from that is where like a lot of these guys are at. And people just don't even realize the delta there. And that's where like guys like ADO and Townsend struggle a little bit.
That's a fair point.
But like that's where guys like Carter Bryant are those freak athletes that are also 6'8" and can still finish. And if he's hitting threes, if Del Orso they're using effectively, you can kind of open it up. Caleb Love, loves to try to get to if he's going to not shooting threes, he likes to try to get to the hoop, but he's been doing a lot of his little floater game that kind of negates a little bit of the shot altering. He's kind of taken what the defense has given him a lot more of late rather than just trying to force it, which I think is part of it. But this, honestly, I think it comes back to, if I'm Arizona and trying to win this game, it goes back to what I've said for years, and I've been seeing it more this year. Defense to offense is the right answer, because you don't want to let the big 7-footers that are good shot blockers get into a half court set when you don't have great shooters, right? In the first round, Akron was begging Townsend and Jaden Bradley to shoot threes, and they made the first couple, and that's why they went up 9-0 to start the game. But it's not the worst strategy, honestly, because Jaden Bradley and Townsend are capable, but if they're being left open for a reason, right? So it's going to be fascinating how they attack. I think it all comes back to the defense to offense. And if you get this game into transition, I think that it plays to Arizona's benefit. They're a good rebounding team. Get out and run, don't get dragged into a rock fight when they're on offense and they're not that great offensively. And Duke is a freaking great defensive team with athletes. They're going to struggle in a half-court set. That's just what's going to happen, right? Yeah. So if I'm Arizona, I'm trying like my damnedest to not let the defense really get set. Try to find ways to be effective, and there's a balance there because you don't want 2-second possession of Caleb Love pulling up from 26 feet, right? That's not a great shot. I mean, if it goes in, awesome, but it's probably not. I think Henry Basar is going to be a fascinating matchup, and it's really going to be, how do you get him the ball? Like, it's not like get the ball in space like a slot receiver, but how do you get him where he's loose and you can throw lobs or you can do pick and pop, because he's capable of both of those things to a very high level. And you have Jaden Bradley, who's a true point guard in that regard, of where he wants to try to take what the defense gives him. But elite level defense from elite level athletes can make that plan go away real fast, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, and I think that's one area where I think it's going to be tougher for Bradley, because Sion James is going to be on him. Sion James is 6'6" and built like a brick shithouse. Like, it's going to be tough for him compared to the first game when he's going up against Caleb Foster. Like, and that's not a slight to Caleb, because he turned out to be a really good defender himself.
Tyrese Proctor.
But Tyrese is going to match up against Caleb Love like he has the last 3 times that he's faced Caleb Love. And that's not on Caleb Love. Like, there's a lot of Duke fans with, PTSD, understandable. But the last 3 times that he's gone up against Tyrese Proctor, he's shut him down. And so, I look at it from that standpoint as well. But I want to ask 2 questions to get out of here. First, give me your prediction, how you see this game going, and give me a score. We gave our predictions last night, so I went just to give you some perspective. I went 87 to 68 is what I have. Yeah, and so I'm kind of hearing you talk about it. You weren't ready for that. I just find again that the way we play, we'd have to play a really bad game to lose. And
there's so many weapons off the bench, TK. Like, even if somebody's not hitting, like, we just got so many weapons off the bench. Like, and I don't think and I didn't mean to cut you off again. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like, there's just so many weapons off the bench. Like, even if the starters aren't doing the starter thing, all right, well, next. Oh, you're not doing it? All right, well, next. You're not doing it? Okay. Oh, wait, you're hitting tonight. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just don't think Arizona has the gumption to. You like that word? The gumption? I don't think they have the gumption for an 8-man bench like Duke has. Like, it's just, and I didn't even give a score prediction last night, TK.
No, you just said just fucking win.
Just fucking win.
But yeah, I mean, so like to give you a shot here, Brett. Like, to finish that thought, I just feel like. I'm going to stick with what I've said pretty much all year long, which is it doesn't matter the style of play. I feel like we can match with anything, and I feel like if Duke plays their A game, it's over, and it's going to be a 20-point win or more. If Duke plays their B game, we're still going to win by 15. And it's not So like, kind of like what you said about last year's Arizona team, I felt the same way about last year's Duke team, where we didn't have that toughness. We complained at every missed call. We complained when we weren't hitting shots. We were Swiss cheese on defense for large stretches of games when it wasn't going our way.
Just whiny.
This team is the complete polar opposite of that, and I think that they've had their sights on this from the second they stepped on campus last June. So that's where I'm coming from, but I want to hear, the rival perspective.
Yeah, and like I said at the first game, I think this Duke team is really fucking good, right? I know. Well, I should warn Adam, we're going to get, when we put the segment on our pod, we're going to finally get that explicit rating that we haven't had in a while.
We've had it.
Yeah, we got one.
Yeah, no. I think it's, I understand where your guys' confidence is coming from, because this team is really good. I think it's Houston and Duke, and then I think there's a big gap, personally. And then I think there's like that next tier, and then I think there's another gap, and that's probably where Arizona should fall, because they're kind of high variable, right? If you get the best version of Arizona, they are 100% capable of beating anybody. Against Houston in that Big 12 title game, they didn't play that great. Like, they made a lot of mistakes, but they played tough, which, again, for me is heartening. And I think I was tweeting, I'm like, guys, there's no shame in this loss. That team is really good. Arizona was missing, like, I think they missed their first 10 shots in that game and still was up in the second half. Right? Like that's a weird thing. The Oregon game, like, they were getting crushed in the first 5 minutes, and with 5 minutes left in the half, they were up. They were down 20 after 5 minutes, right? I would caution y'all against a little bit of hubris here, even though you are a really great team. If that team has that kind of confidence, that could be their downfall, kind of thing. My expectation is this is going to be more of a rock fight than people are anticipating, because I think Arizona, people don't realize unless they're watching it, and I don't even think Arizona fans have fully internalized it. It's a defense first team now, and so it's just a different thing. It's closer to a Sean Miller team than a traditional Tommy Lloyd team, right?
I agree.
And so I think that is going to be fascinating to watch. I think it's going to be more of a rock fight. I do think Duke, on a given day, is generally the more talented, more finished product team. I think Arizona's got the puncher's chance in this game, to use that metaphor. And I think it's probably more of a chance than y'all are giving credit for. I don't know if I can go and there's the homer side of me and there's the realistic side of me. And maybe we'll just say that my score take, my official one will be the homer take, but my unofficial winking one will be, flip the scores. I think it's going to be 68-64. And my homer take will say Arizona, but there's going to be no shame in losing to this Duke team if that's what happens. And I think if Duke comes in expecting to win by 20, it's certainly possible, but I doubt it personally. And I think they're going to be in for a rock fight. I think like you said, D, it's going to come down to who's making shots. Sure. Arizona's shot 47% from three in the first couple games. If they're shooting that way from three and playing their defense, y'all better look out, right? And that's
100%. But I'll also I'll counter argue that with, I think Duke is a defense first team.
That's why I think it's gonna be a rock fight, man.
if you watch this Duke team, this Duke team lives on defense to offense. They love it. They love shutting people down. And I think they're greedy, and I think they're motivated. And John Shire said, we want dogs this year. I think they're going to wake up and they're going to eat their Wheaties with glass and nails, and they're going to come into this game and they're going to shut anybody down, whether it be Arizona or the 96 Bulls. I don't think it matters. Truthfully, no, all jokes aside, truthfully, I do not think it matters to this Duke team. I think they have one goal, they have one mission, and they play together. And there's no whining, there's no head downs, there's no complaining. Whoever's hot, shoot the ball. Whoever's not, play defense, and that's what it's going to be. Yeah, it's going to be a rock fight, but that's what Duke wants. I feel like that's what Duke wants. Like you want to throw hands? Let's throw hands. Like let's get it cracking, and we'll win this shit from the free throw line if we have to. It doesn't matter. Like I have not been able to say this in a many year about a Duke team. This is the toughest team in the nation. This is the toughest team mentally, physically, like emotionally, length. Like,
can I ask one question?
Team in the country.
Can I ask one question? I really want to understand your guys' perspective on this, because like Arizona's been battle tested in the Big 12. Like that has absolutely toughened them up. Like we all kind of hoped and expected. ACC ain't exactly been it this year. So Duke has not been facing Houston 3 times like Arizona has, right? They haven't been facing Iowa State and Texas Tech, and even BYU. I remember Arizona beat BYU at BYU, and I was like, guys, this is a low-key great win. And now BYU is sitting in the Sweet 16 after beating Wisconsin, and they're a team that's, crafty little high-scoring offense. They can beat anybody on a given day. Do you feel like Duke has seen enough challenges in conference play to have them ready for that rock fight?
Can I go? I don't. I've heard this all year, and Duke cannot recruit for the other schools. I can't help you win games, and we can only win the games that we are scheduled to play. So when
you sound like me talking about the Pac-12 the last couple of years.
Well, but Brett, to be fair, is it not true? Like I can't.
I was saying the same thing against Pac-12.
I can't help it. Like UNC, you are not supposed to be this bad, bro. You are a top 4 winning program of all time. You are terrible. Like I can't help you. Wake Forest, you were supposed to be better. Louisville, you were supposed to be shit. Clemson, what the hell were you doing? Like, I can't help y'all. Like, we have to win the games that we were scheduled to play, and we did. Except for Kansas and Kentucky. But other than that, we've played tough. And again, 96 Bulls, like, line it up. Like, I don't think this team is afraid of anybody. I think this team has confidence. I think this team has motivation. I think they want to win for each other. There's no I don't see. There's not a lot of flaws in this team. Like if you want to, what? I mean, shit. We 18 for 21 from the free throw line the other night. Like I just don't see a lot of flaws in this team. So no, I can't get behind the have you been tested type of shit because. If you beat everybody by 25, there's no test.
Go ahead, TK.
Yeah, I want to answer your question too, because I have a similar but a kind of a different viewpoint from it. I can go one of 2 ways, and I think they're both true. Is that one, I do think that this team has been tested. It may just not be in the ways that people look. There have been halves where we've been tested, like the second half of that Carolina game in the semifinals of the ACC tournament. That was a big time test for us. Blowing a 23-point lead, like that was, you got to figure that out. The same thing, we were tested in the first game of the ACC tournament when Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown all go out within 90 seconds of each other toward the end of the first half, and you got to learn how to play without the best player in the country.
Talk about a hard work.
You figure out a way to win that game. Louisville, that first half, didn't play particularly well, figured it out, came out, and blew the doors off in the second half. We played Auburn. We played Kansas. We played Kentucky early in the year. We played at Arizona. We blew the doors off of a pretty solid Illinois team in Madison Square Garden later in the year. So, the testing thing, I understand is the talking point. But I also, the other side of that that I was going to point out is that I think we're fresh. I think we don't play guys 35, 36, 38 minutes a night. In our 2 games in the tournament, I think the top player was Tyrese Proctor playing 31 minutes. And that's just because he was lighting it up. So, I do think that we're going to be fresh. Arizona and Oregon played a late night game on Sunday night. They got to travel cross country, go into the East Coast time zone, and that was a dogfight. So you know what I mean. So I do think that there is that aspect as well. So you know, people
I
tend to
100%
ask
agree.
that question. Yeah, they tend to ask that question in a negative light, but it actually might be a positive for Duke, where they might be a little bit more fresh.
Well, it's funny because like I think back to the first time I think I was on, I was saying that these programs are kind of that Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at the other Spider-Man.
I said
And,
that
like,
today.
Yeah, and like
I said that today.
Each of them on their coast probably gets a lot of hate that's somewhat rooted in jealousy, right? The TK, I think you're, and like the funny thing is for me as I get that it's kind of the narrative. I usually hate narratives, but I'm saying this more as an Arizona fan that has lived saying the exact same things.
Sure.
You know, if this Arizona team was in the old Pac-12, they're probably a 2 seed with a better record, right?
Sure.
And so like and a lot of Arizona fans, you know, they're angsty for a Final Four. Like it is an immeasurable amount of angst. It has been a long time. It has been a generation.
Lute Olson ain't walking through that door. You know what I mean?
No, and they've you know, I still maintain if Jamel Horn's 3 against the eventual champion UConn rattles in instead of rattles out, Sean Miller's probably still the head coach.
Yeah.
You know,
Trajan Lane got a foul call that UConn doesn't win.
And I think TK, your points are well taken, and I don't disagree with them. And that's actually where in the Big 12 tournament, I think it was fantastic for Arizona that they got a double bye in that, so they didn't have to play the first 2 rounds, so they could get rested. And then I liked that. All right, now you get some real challenges, and I wanted to face Houston to get one more, you know, physical test and get sharp, because the downside of that is always you get rusty if you're rested, right?
Sure.
And I've lived that as an Arizona fan, and so now it's like I'm kind of on the Duke's kind of where Arizona was in the Pac-12 the last couple of years right now with a mediocre conference around it. You can only beat the guys in front of you. I've said that. I've been that guy the last couple of years, and it just makes it it's more of an unknown, I think, than people know, and that's why we play the game. And I think it's going to be a fucking great game, because I think these two teams are really good. I almost wish this. I think this would be better served as an Elite Eight matchup with a Final Four on the line. I think back to like this feels like an elite level Sweet 16 matchup.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a fun game.
I'll say this: it's hard to get to the Sweet 16, right? Like this is not an easy tournament. This is the hardest thing to win in all of sports. Like
the dirty secret is the best team almost never wins the March Madness tournament.
True,
almost never.
But I have never been more confident in a Duke team, and I just go back to their mental toughness. Like I just think I just all year when people have talked to me about it, because I'm from North Carolina, I grew up 12 minutes from Duke. Like I'm like you, Brent. Like I'm there. I am in it. It just hits different. TK, you're here too. You know what I'm talking about. It's just damn different here, and I understand that Duke's, you know, national televised all over the world, whatever. But it's different, and this Duke team, it feels different. Like they have a different level of excitement. They have a different level of toughness. They have a different level of let's play together. Like if you've got the hot hand tonight, we're going to give it to you. But every night we're going to punch somebody in the mouth. We're going to play some damn defense. We're going to play some damn defense. We're going to use all 5 fouls.
Oh yeah, I think we're violently agreeing, man. I said that after the first matchup. I was like, this is one of the best Duke teams I can remember. I'm going back to like the 90s elite, you know, dominant teams
type shits.
Yeah, and you know, at the beginning of the season, that's not where Arizona was. They are at a different, you know, when Arizona won in '97. You know, this is a narrative thing that people like to backfill and wishcast, but they weren't a 1 seed when they won. They were what seed they were? They were a 4 seed. And
they beat all 1 seeds.
They beat 3 1 seeds on the way there, which is as many as you can do, right? And this team had, you know, it's unfair to compare them to that team but this team doesn't necessarily have the star power like a Duke has, but that 97 team didn't really have. I mean, Mike Bibby, sure, but like Miles Simon, Michael Dickerson, AJ Bramlett. When do you guys remember AJ Bramlett's name being thrown around by somebody other than an Arizona fan?
Well, I told you on the first one that we did back in November. I love.
Who was on that 2001 Arizona team that Duke beat?
Well, that was Richard Jefferson, Gilbert Arenas.
That team was stacked.
Was Gilbert Arenas? Was that Gilbert Arenas?
Gilbert Arenas.
Was that Jason Gardner on then?
Jason Gardner.
That team was, those two teams were stacked.
They were. That was such a fun game because there were so many NBA players on that floor.
That whole court was
insane. It was insane. And it's great because Gilbert Arenas still complains about it.
I love his podcast though. Yeah. I watch his podcast daily.
Well, he's the one that told us that he doesn't ever go in the ocean because that's not his house. So if you get bit by a shark in the ocean, it's your fault because you're entering their world. And I haven't been in the ocean since. I mean, it's a little hyperbole there. I mean, I'll get in the ocean, but nevertheless, it's a perfect way for us to close up shop here, Brett. Tell everybody where they can find you, and apparently you read out all the good comments. So,
yeah. So we are generally only an audio only platform. So find us on Spotify, iTunes. We will read your review live on the air. It's a gimmick we like to do, and we haven't had one in a while. If you want to hate on me or even more hate on Adam, even better. Yeah, we'll read it live on the air. It's just a fun way to engage. We're on the Twitter machine at Wildcat Radio AZ. So I tend to, have one or two of these during a game. And that Oregon game, I accelerated with miserable drinking in the first half, and then it quickly accelerated even further with happy drinking when Arizona was playing well. So I tend to get a little looser on the tweets there. But it's Adam and I will be probably recording. We're going to add this segment on our pod. We'll kind of get, our deep dive for, a little more, a little deeper, probably onto the Arizona side of things.
Sure.
And, we welcome all, and then, we'll be enemies for a day. And I think we'll go back to being the Spider-Man meme of, a respect. And I pity the team that's going to face the winner of this game, because I think they're going to be in for it.
Yeah,
this is going to be a great game. It's going to be one of the best games of the tournament, and I will book that. I'm not going to give a score, just fucking win, but it'll be a great game.
Awesome. Well, again, Brett, appreciate you. D, appreciate you as well. Leave some comments for D in the YouTube comments.
Yeah, can't wait to see him.
And Brett, we will see you on the other side. Let's go.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, sir.
Bear down.